So I appreciate folks who were able to join us tonight for what is the last in a series of our fall Listen and Learn. This one's particularly focused on work that we're doing, thinking about our high schools and what we call high school for the future. My name is Ryan Scallon. I'm the superintendent of Portland Public Schools. I've been with the district since July of 23. And when I joined the district, I started to learn about the community and about Portland and about the district through a series of listening sessions that involved talking to all of the schools, members of all of our different communities, and what we called through a Listen and Learn series that engaged just about 500 people face to face, and then through a survey as well. And so this is sort of the update time to sort of say, what did we do with all of that information? And what we did is we took all of that information that we gathered. We worked with an outside group and a series of community stakeholders. So 16 members of our community that represented alumni, students, staff, principal, parents, sort of all corners of our community. And we refreshed our strategic plan. And so, Pamela, if you want to go to the next slide. That group, yeah, right there. That group worked to take the Portland Promise, which was the strategic plan for Portland Public Schools since 2017, and refreshed it. And what you can see there is the five pillars or five priorities of the strategic plan. And they actually feel very similar to what was in the Portland Promise. So continue with a strong focus on making sure that all students achieve at high levels, that there is a focus on whole students and making sure that it is a great place to not just learn at high levels, but a great place to be. And students like going to school here, that it is a district that focuses on its people and making sure that staff like to work here, that we do that all grounded in equity. And then the fifth pillar that is new to this strategic plan and an add-on relative to the Portland Promise is around systems. Because what we saw over the last several years is that our systems sometimes got in the way of our work instead of enhancing it. And so that was the fifth. And so if we looked at this another way on the next slide, you can see that these are the five priorities we identified for the next 5 years. And each of these priorities has a number of initiatives, and we're going to talk about what are the initiatives in year one, but each of these priorities have initiatives that are designed to come out over the next 5 years. And that each of those initiatives goes through a series of phases where they're first in a design phase to make sure that we're taking the time to align them to Portland Public Schools and the Portland community. Many of them go through a pilot phase, then a launch phase, and then we monitor them over the life of the strategic plan to make sure that they're having the designed impact. And so it's not designed to be something where we do all of the initiatives at once or just do everything all in the first year, but it's designed to scale over 5 years to really make it sustainable so that we see lasting impact. And this year that we're in right now, there's a handful of what I think of as really exciting initiatives that are building off of past work, as well as laying the groundwork for future pieces in Portland Public Schools. And so if you can go to the next slide. Within achievement, if you were to talk to a student in our elementary school, what they would talk about is our reading program that continues to be implemented and further enhanced. And so that's one of our initiatives is in our K-8 program is just continuing to work through what is called our EL education or our reading curriculum there to make sure that students are having really world-class reading instruction. This year we started CKLA, which is a phonics-based program to build essential early literacy skills. The third initiative that has been in the design phase and in sort of initial work is really thinking about re-envisioning and deepening our high school work. And so that is a piece that we're actually going to dive into deeply tonight. And then also within achievement, we have work that's going on to think about our special education. And so those are 4 initiatives that we have going on this year. Most of them are in the design phase, except for the first 2 around reading instruction. where they are in the full implementation phase. Around whole students, so that second pillar, we have work going on that is really exciting about continuing to deepen the relationships that exist between students and between staff and students. And so this is thinking about our advisory programs that exist at schools. It's thinking about our social emotional learning curriculum. And it's thinking about overall, how do we support students to have success throughout the day, even when they may need redirection, and support when they may get off task, as will happen with a student. And so that initiative under Whole Student is really thinking about our overall school climate. In the other areas, this is really what we think of as less student-facing and more staff and back office or systems thinking. And so we have work that continues to deepen around equity and staff mindset. We're working to think about how do other organizations really define staff culture in a strong manner, and how should we do that work in Portland Public Schools so that we are truly an employer of choice. And then you see two pieces there around systems. And so one is around building out our data systems, and the second is around building a multi-year financial model so that our budget is aligned to our strategic priorities and we don't have that ebb and flow from feeling like we're financially in a good spot and then where we have to make significant cuts, like we had to this past year. And so making sure that we have a multi-year financial model. And so these are the initiatives this year. And if you were to sort of fast forward a year from now, you'll actually hear about these initiatives continuing, as well as some additional ones, because again, it's not designed to be one-year pieces, but to go through that series of phases and to continue to deepen throughout the 5 years of the strategic plan. We also want to make sure that we don't just say this is the work we're doing, but we want to make sure it has impact on students and on staff in a positive manner, and that we can measure that and see that progress. And so the steering committee that designed and really influenced the strategic plan also helped us establish measures of success for the 5 years. And so the next two slides walk through what are the measures that we're holding ourselves accountable for. And so you can see that if I just walk through those really quickly, you can see measures around high school graduation, so making sure that students are graduating truly prepared and empowered, being ready for post-secondary success, academic performance as measured on a state assessment, as well as through English proficiency, students earning post-secondary credentials, whether it's an AP credit or it is a college credit through dual enrollment, or a technical certification, as well as recognizing how important it is for students to make that transition from learning to read to reading to learn, students being on track in second grade with reading. The second set of measures on the second page really looks at school climate. So students reporting that they have an adult that they have a strong relationship with, that they like school and that shows through attendance, and that we close many of the gaps that exist between subgroups within our student population. And so we're really able to address in this plan, we hope, the equity gaps that exist between student populations, and so that we see those gaps closing. And so the hope is that our strategic plan really pushes us to not just say that these are the pieces, but to really see that it results in change. And so wanted to share that update. There's plenty of opportunity to engage in this work. And so if you were to visit your school and you could ask them about this work, they would tell you about it. If you're interested in getting involved in a work group that's digging in along one of these areas, you can certainly reach out to me, and I'm happy to make the connection with a lead that is doing that. Or if some of the work that comes up in the next year is of interest, certainly reach out as we do that. One of the areas that I shared about briefly here that is a focus this year is about our high schools and really thinking about what it means to prepare students for future success. And if we all think about when we were in high school and what high school looked like and the jobs it was preparing us for, that world is changing, and that world's changing ever faster. And we need to make sure that our high schools are doing that. And we're fortunate in Portland that we have great schools that have a lot of successes. And we know that we can also improve them, and that we need to be actively preparing for what they should look like 10 years from now. But we need to start that planning now. And we do that work already through thinking about professional development and work that teachers do in collaboration with each other. We also have opportunities that the state's presented to us that could give us potentially funding to support this work. And so we want to also share with you an update about how we're raising our hand and saying, we'd be interested in being considered for that as we go through this. And so happy to pass the work to Pamela Otunu-Thompson, who's really leading that work and championing our High School for the Future work across the district. And so Pamela, happy to pass it to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Super excited to be here with you. I'm just going to take some time today. Actually, I'll say, every time I present, I realize I've never given anyone my title, and afterwards people ask, what is your role anyways? So I'm the Director of Secondary Innovations and Outcomes for the district. All right, so going into what we're going to review today is, so I'll share with you the why, like why we're doing this work, why we're designing Portland's High School for the Future, right? I'll also share with you sort of the work that's been done during the past couple years, where we've come from, where we currently are, and where we're headed. I'll share all of that with you and review that work. And then lastly, just to remind you all and share ways in which you can give your feedback to us, stay engaged in upcoming events similar to this one here. Right, so starting with why we're designing a high school for the future. So we're designing a high school experience for the future success of students, right? So what we're trying to do is to really stay responsive to the community's wants and needs, what they've shared with us, our students, the skills and attributes our students need to have in order to be successful when they graduate. So really ensuring that our students are prepared and empowered for success upon graduation. So in doing that, we're looking at instructional programs and practices, structures, systems that need to be in place in order to make sure that our students are prepared and are well equipped with those skills and attributes. And in doing that, also really being responsive to the fact that our facilities are in dire need of repair, and they're not in top shape, right? So really thinking about making sure that we secure funding or go after funding whenever the opportunity presents itself, so that we have the money to address the needs, our facility needs. So, Superintendent Scallon spoke about opportunities we have that we're not going to pass by, and just make sure we do what we can to make sure that we're considered for those funding streams. Okay, so here's our vision. Just want to start and ground us there. This is the Portland Public Schools vision and mission. And the vision, I'm going to read that to you because that's really key in this work that we're doing. We say that all learners will be fully prepared to participate and succeed in a diverse and ever-changing world. So that's the key. So we're not changing our vision. We're not changing our mission. Our Portland promise is still strong and stays true, and we stand by it. So we're just trying to lift this work up and make sure it comes to life, right? That we fulfill the promise that we've given to students, families, and our community at large. So that's what we're doing, being reflective and making sure that we're reviewing our practices and redesigning in a way that is responsive to the diverse needs of our students, right? And the world that's constantly changing around us. So that's at the heart of the work. So here, this sort of diagram shows you the phase that we're going to be going through. And right now we're at that initial design plan. So that initial phase there. So that's where we're looking at what the community shared with us about what skills and attributes our students need to have in order to be prepared when they graduate. Along with that, they shared with us what conditions need to be in place in order to help students meet those skills and attributes outlined in the Portrait of a Graduate. So we're really designing at all levels, at structures, systems, right, and the classroom level, at the building level, and some supports that need to be in place at the district level to support students in order to attain to become that graduate that we want them to be. And so we're designing that. And we're right now in this moment, right? We're coming to you and sharing that update and where we are in that work. And we're going to continue designing that. So during the course of this year, we'll flesh that out, design that out further. And then next year, we'll continue that design phase, right? And then we'll continue looking at that as well. And as we design, we're going to have opportunities where we can start to implement some of what's being designed. And in all of this, there'll be sort of a phased plan in terms of like how we're going to implement gradually over the course of time based on the conditions we already have in place that would foster some of these things to be put into motion. And so as we do that, we'll continue right next year, and even this spring, as we continue to design and flesh that out, we'll come back and engage the community, give updates, ask for feedback and all of that. So, and as we start to implement, there's no point in time when we're going to say, okay, we're done. We've accomplished the task. We've created the ideal high school experience. There's nothing left to be done. And that goes back to what's at the heart of this in our vision, is that we're trying to prepare students to succeed in a diverse and ever-changing world. So that means the world will continue to change. And as a result, as we design and we implement, we're going to continue to monitor and refine. We're going to keep going back to our stakeholders in our community to ensure that we're making adjustments as the world changes to make sure students are prepared to succeed, right? So that we're nothing stagnant, but we're continually reflecting and making changes and adjustments along the way. And so you see here in front of you, really the first, it says pathways to the high school for the future. Really that first you see, cap there that you see really hits on the work that we're doing right now, right? This is the work that we're doing, and this is the work that we'll continue to do. And this is where we'll monitor and refine, and we'll keep at this to ensure that students are prepared to succeed after they leave us. So that's really bringing to life our Portrait of a Graduate and Portrait of a School community, which I've mentioned. And we'll look more closely at what sort of, what are those like pillars that are part of that that Portrait of a Graduate and Portrait of a School community momentarily. But that's the work we're doing right now. Now, we also have the opportunity to go after some funding in order to take care of our facility needs, right? So the first one there, we've got two options. The first one is the major capital construction funding opportunity. And that really looks at just our facilities needs. So I'm going to pause there for a moment. I could read to you sort of what that entails and what we've put forth, but I'm going to have Superintendent Scallon, who is much better at sharing that, and then we'll move on to sharing about the integration.
Yeah, so the quick piece on the major capital is this is truly a needs-based assessment. So this is where the state does an assessment on the state of the facility based on an application and then a walkthrough and compares it relative to other buildings in the state. And 7 or 8 years ago, Portland Public Schools submitted for Portland High School, and it was rated at that time the 15th worst building in the state. And so we can't say what it'll be rated this time, but what I can share with you is some of the concerns that were highlighted when we had an external architecture firm look at all three of our major high schools, Portland High School, Casco Bay, and Deering. Portland High School, some of the things that the application highlighted were that many parts of the building are not ADA or handicap accessible, that the electrical system is beyond its expected life, which was 40 years, and there's no available replacement parts. And so the last time there was a repair that was needed, they had to go out, find an old system in another building, take that system, repair it, and then use those pieces to repair Portland high schools. And so we're running out of where we can do that. There's standing water in parts of the basement. And then what is modern day fire retardant and fire suppressant building systems and just architectural pieces that you would expect in a building. It's not present in Portland High School. And so if a fire were to get into the attic, it would be of significant concern. At Casco Bay High School, the sprinkler system is over 50 years old, and so in need of major repair. Many of the classrooms are, again, not ADA accessible. There's reeking roof and exterior walls. And then because of the fact that that building was sort of retrofitted to be able to take on Casco Bay, in the case of an emergency, it's just not designed to be able to effectively handle quick evacuation. And so the architects identified that as a significant concern. At Deering, just one thing I would identify among many is that with the aging HVAC system there, as well as water penetration from several areas, there's mold issues that exist in several parts of the building that don't have a temporary or permanent fix. And so it results in actually losing use of parts of the building on a permanent nature. And so these are things that when a facility assessment happened in 2017, it was identified that it would cost over $130 million to fix. It's well north of that now. And so the major capital construction is one way that we could look to get significant funding from the state as a potential to not just renovate, but to actually have a new building for a school.
Thank you. So in that, so we've, as you've heard, so we've put in that application, we've included Portland High School, Deering High School, and the Casco Bay Pats building that's shared there in this. So, if, as they go through during the course of this year, the state's going to come through and do a walkthrough and do an assessment to see what the condition really looks like. And let's say one of our schools makes it to the top of the list. That's where, then we go to the school board, looks and reviews whether or not we're just going to use the funds to repair that one school, or there'll be an offer from the state to look at combining schools in this work and doing some, maybe having a new building, or anyways, we look at that to see whether or not we're just going to repair the one school, or we're going to really consolidate and look at fixing multiple schools at once in that process, considering that we have 3 schools that really do need repair. Then there's that second option for funding, the integrated consolidated 9 through 16 educational facility. And that one is a little different than the major capital construction fund, whereas the capital construction fund was really just looking at the facility needs. The integrated consolidated 9 through 16 is looking at innovation, right? So how are we rethinking, redesigning how education is delivered, how students are taught, what happens in the classroom, at the building level, and at the district level. So what are the systems and structures that are going to be in place to really transform the learning experience? So in that application, there's nothing that we need to mention in terms of a building or, like the spaces that will be available, nothing construction-wise. It's all about that the educational design. That piece is what's tied in there. So when they do look at our application there, they will consider where we landed in terms of the needs for our buildings in the major capital construction fund. So they're not absent or void of each other, but the state will look at both when they consider our, how to weigh where we land in receiving that funding potentially. Again, I just want to reiterate, so those are funding opportunities, those 2. But just to come back to that first piece, that is the work we're doing. We're really trying to lift up our Porch River graduate and Porch River school community. That's the work we're doing now and we will continue doing. And if we get funding, then we'll have the opportunity to repair our buildings and have, a new state-of-the-art building that really enhances that learning that we've designed to happen, right, to lift up our portrait.
Pamela, can I add one piece?
Yes, yeah.
Is the hard part about all of this process is the first piece around doing the work of continuing to deepen the great work that's happening at schools and to continue to enhance it, right? That's that first bit in terms of the work of the portrait of the graduate, as Pamela was saying. The potential for state funding, what that does is it actually continues then our community engagement process. So Pamela, if you go back a slide, right? So if we were to receive state, if the state were to identify either that one of our buildings qualified under major construction or the application under integrated qualified and the state was interested, we would then go through this process again that you see on the screen with all these touch points for community engagement, because this is a multi-year process where there'd be a ton of community engagement to be able to say, let's now talk about this. Let's go from concept to really try to make this real. And so I don't want folks to walk away from this webinar thinking that this is the window of time, the only window of time in which to give feedback, because there's this enhanced window of time that comes even after when it comes to if we get state or if we're eligible for state funding based on these applications. But either way, we need to continue to do the work to enhance the portrait within our schools, but the community engagement would go even further if we had the option of state funding. So just want to name that here, because sometimes people think that this is the only window of time, but this is the window of time based on the application window. But then the engagement with the state after that is multi-year, more than 5, like it's many year window of time. So just want to name that. Go ahead, Mel. You're muted, Pamela.
Since we've spoken about the portrait of a graduate being sort of the work we're trying to lift up, right, to make sure our students have the skills and attributes, I'll just briefly just share sort of how we got to this point here. So 2 years ago, when we started looking at right, improving our schools and our the student experience, really, and enhancing what we're currently doing, building upon the great things we're doing, we wanted to make sure our students were prepared for success, right? To fulfill the promise we've given to the community that students will be prepared to succeed in a world that's constantly changing. So in order to create that vision of what the vision for high school, we went to the community, we went to stakeholders and asked folks, what are the skills and attributes that students need to have in order to succeed? So we asked students, we asked alumni. So I'm actually a graduate of Portland Public Schools myself, attended King Middle School and Portland High School. And so just wanted to share that piece. So this is very near and dear to my heart as a result. We also asked parents, we asked the educators, we asked employers, right? We asked community partners that we have. And we asked all these folks, like, what is it that our students need to have, right, in order to be successful upon graduation? And this is really over, after asking over 1,000 folks through focus groups, surveys, interviews, and all of that. These are the things that emerged over and over again, is that our students need to be self-advocates, community builders, right? Community is a strong part of what they need to hold. Lifelong learners, skilled communicators, problem solvers, and other areas in order for them to be just prepared for success overall. So these are like the high level buckets that you see here in terms of what we heard from the community. And so this is what we're trying to prepare students to, these are the skills and attributes we want them to have when they graduate. So you can't see, so these, if you have our portrait and you can see it on our website, there are elements underneath each of these. So for instance, in self-advocate, you see that students get to a place where they understand themselves deeply. So their passions, their strengths, challenges, and their goals. They are able to ask for help, right? And when they need it on their own, and advocate for themselves, they understand how they learn best, and so can make choices due to that, and also advocate as a result of knowing themselves well. And they can manage their mental and physical health. In Community Builder, we really look at strengthening our students' collaboration skills so that they're good collaborators, right? And a strong member of the community. They embrace diversity and in the school community and in the school and then the community at large as a whole. And they have empathy for others, right? So fostering that piece and helping students understand the importance of building relationships and making informed decisions to serve the common good. And then in lifelong learner there, really we're looking at students who have a passion for learning. They've mastered those fundamental academic skills. They can make meaning of new information when it presents itself to them, and they take risks and they're persevering, right? In the skill communicator, we have students who can collaborate really well with lots of different communities. So that ties back into that community builder piece there. And they can express themselves in multiple ways, right? In formats, and to lots of different audiences. So they have that skill as well to know how to adapt and how to support communication in different mediums. So, and then understanding others is a key piece of that as well. And problem solver, that sort of is key there and goes without saying a whole lot, but that they're curious and they're asking questions, right? And that they look at problems with different perspectives and different lenses, and that all of this ties again to the other sort of buckets here that you see, and then they're brainstorming collaboratively. So collaboration, really, and understanding diversity and embracing that, and being part of a community is really key to a lot of these things here, and as well as understanding yourself in order to then navigate the world that you're in. So applying skills and knowledge in problem solving is there as well. And then in that sort of like prepared for success, overall, what we heard from folks that didn't necessarily fit into maybe any key areas is we heard a lot from folks, parents and employers, and even the alums, being able to make informed financial decisions. Like, we really need to equip our students to be able to do that and to be able to access resources in the community and in the school, so that they have the skills to do that so they can do that when they leave. And recognizing there are multiple pathways to success as well to achieve goals. So being able to understand that well. Perseverance also shows up here very much so, and being able to navigate in career and post-secondary education. So these are all, there's a lot here, but these are sort of the key things that if our students had, right, they would be able to succeed in a world that's constantly changing. Their skills that transcend just what happens in the classroom and just academic skills, but into being successful all around. So I'm just gonna, we have a small group here. I'm going to pause and just have people sort of share. If you could just share with the whole group as you process this, take the time you need to. But what's one that resonates with you? Or what are some here? What are some of the some of these that resonate with you as you look at this portrait of a graduate? And then also feel free to share. We understand there are some things we're doing really well, right? So there's strong things happening in our schools, and we're trying to build upon it, right? To make sure we're really supporting all of our students equitably across the system. So share what resonates with you. What are some things that we're doing well right now to support kids that we can build on?
And just because we're in a webinar format, if people want to raise their Zoom hand, I can unmute them so that they can share. You can also put it in the chat, and we can share it out that way as well. Pamela, it looks like we may have a pretty bashful group right now.
I know. I was going to give a couple more seconds here to see if anyone wants to highlight anything. All right, well, we'll move on, and then we can, well, as we continue and then we get to the Q&A, even feel free to, oh, Patty Nickerson, a member of our design team, actually, from USM. Welcome.
I just wanted to let you know that the chat feature is disabled, so people may want to put a question or a comment in the chat. And I will just comment briefly on the reflection questions that I see students through our early college program definitely prepared for success. I think that's something that the schools are doing well, and absolutely something that we want to continue to build on in the Portrait of a Graduate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. Okay. So, as we asked the question, what are the skills and attributes our students need to be able to succeed? What organically sort of arose was responses that really were tied to the conditions for success, right? The conditions that would foster that graduate, those skills and attributes in that Portrait of a Graduate. And so, as a result, we have now a Portrait of a School community that came out of the feedback we gathered from the community. And so there were 8 sort of pillars here. The first 4 being rich and numerous opportunities. That needs to be present. We need to have conditions where we focus on building community within our schools and the community at large. There needs to be challenging and meaningful curriculum happening. And also there needs to be instruction that supports each student. And so for each of these, again, there's like, if you're looking at the portrait, the Portrait of a School community itself, there's lots of elements underneath each of these. I'm just going to lift up 5 that appear from these 4 here. So one is, to guide students to take ownership of their learning with opportunities for rigor and joy. So that goes back to that self-advocacy piece, but also goes into academics there as well. So we're trying to really give students ownership of their learning and make sure the curriculum is rigorous and there's joy. So not one and without the other, or one at the expense of the other, but making sure like learning is joyous and students are enjoying their time and they're having fun. And we're really elevating what's happening in the classroom, making sure it's rigorous so that students are prepared when they graduate, and they can say like, yeah, I was well prepared, right? My education prepared me to be successful upon graduation. We also are looking to create school structures and staffing that supports all students in belonging and being well known. So that goes into that focus on building community piece. So making sure there's communities within our schools where kids are supported. Learning about and celebrating the diverse identities represented in the community. So that's really key there is we're really trying to be very intentful in terms of embracing the diversity that exists in Portland Public Schools. It's a true asset that we really need to really utilize and not take for granted, and make sure it shows up in what happens in the classroom as well as what happens in the greater school community. To help lift that up, because as as I pointed out in the Portrait of a Graduate, a lot of being able to understand diverse perspectives, right, and different lenses, being able to communicate to different groups, right, understanding that all comes, you learn that when you're a part of a diverse community, right? So we really, that's the beautiful thing about Portland Public Schools, that we have that at hand. And we really want to lift that up and have students feel pride in being part of a diverse community, and how they identify themselves within the community and take pride in that. We also want to focus on real world inquiry and problem solving. So not, just the old sit and get in the classroom where you've got just a piece of paper that you're writing down and the teachers in front of the classroom giving a lecture, but really to have, be able to apply what students learn in a real world sort of scenario. So whether it's in the classroom through projects or going out in the community and doing some work out there, we really want to make sure that students understand how to solve problems in a real world context. And then assess each student's progress towards learning goals and use assessment to inform instruction. So, helping educators to understand how to use assessment and develop strong assessments, right? And to use that to tweak and modify instruction, right? To inform their instruction as they're teaching students who are at different ability levels to meet the needs of all our students at various levels. And then the next 4, support for each student's future plan. You'll see that there. It's really key. Adequate staffing structures and resources, a thriving staff, quality facilities. So some highlights from these, the first being that support for each student's future plan is so key. So we're really working hard to design structures and systems in place to really support kids as they complete their post-secondary plan. So as they enter in 9th grade and they work their way through to 12th grade, there's a plan in place, and there's an adult checking in with them to make sure they're hitting. They not only have the classes they need to graduate, but also they have the opportunities for gathering interview skills, right? Building their resumes, learning how to submit applications for work and for college, right? And that they're taking advantage of the early college access they have and getting that while they're in high school, right? At a much lower rate, and sometimes some of it's actually free to students at the high school level, and then credentialing as well. So really preparing students as they move along. So that's really huge, something we're trying to lift a lot in this design. The other piece is designing structures and assigning staff so that students who need differentiated support get that. And so there we really want to, Superintendent Scallon, when he was looking at the mission measures for the strategic plan, highlighted we're trying to close that sort of achievement gap. And so here, right, the community said that's really key. We need to make sure we're supporting all students at all levels. We're supporting our multilingual learners, our students with special education needs, our students who need support in different ways, right? And maybe it's not academics, but we have the systems and structures in place to make sure all of our students are supported. And we're really being, with an equity lens to really close that achievement gap in the end. And then we're also looking at how do we support teachers, right? How do we support our staff so that they're thriving and they enjoy being here, and they're really looking at improving their craft. So we've already put into place some key structures and systems, and really to help educators have meaningful opportunities to get feedback from their supervisors and from each other as well, so that it's actionable and it really helps them to improve their craft and to improve what happens in the classroom. So that's one that educators have asked for, and that we're really working to make sure it plays out and it's in place. Ensuring universal and ready access to current technology, right? That goes without saying. We need that in place in our current day and age where technology is a big part of how the world operates. And then that last piece, quality facilities, there, it's really making sure we have facilities that inspire students and staff, right? And really also helps them to see the value, that they're valued and their work has value as well. So the condition in which you learn, right? The facility or environment in which you're teaching also says a lot about says a lot about how well valued you are in terms of what you're being provided. And also, it allows students to take pride in, oh, this is my school, this is the space I have. It allows the community to come in and take part in community engagements and help support students and all of that. So we're looking at building community centers within our school and making sure that we have state-of-the-art facilities that really support the learning that needs to happen in this ever-changing world, which really calls for high STEM equipment, and robotics equipment, and, just medical equipment and all of that. So we're really trying to lift all of that up to make sure students have what they need as we integrate CTE into our design. So lastly here, as we start to wrap up, just wanted to share that in this work, there's a lot that we do need to consider, and there's lots of questions that we're asking ourselves, and lots of questions the community is asking us, especially in terms of when we think about that integrated, consolidated application, that if we get funding, we will be looking at, combining our schools. And in that combining, there are certain things, right? I mentioned that the work we're doing is trying to lift up our Port River graduate and Port River school community in our current setting, right? We're working to design structures and systems and experiences in our current setting. Some of the ideal of what we need to get to won't all be able to happen in our current buildings and in a state where we're 3 different schools. Some of it won't be able to happen. We'll be able to lift as much as we can, and then there'll be a point in which we'll have to stop. So if we do have the opportunity to combine, we'll be able to take advantage of the economies of scale and the advantages of that come along with that. But we also, right, our Port River graduate and Port River school community explicitly highlights the importance of community, right? And being well known and being valued and all of that. So in this design, we are going to be very intentful to make sure that we're building small communities within like a large sort of like campus setting or school setting, right? So we're not looking at just one large school where kids are lost in it, but we're looking at sort of designing a campus educational experience where kids are still in small communities and they're still well known. Staffing is one that comes up, and just want to go back to what it says in the Port River school community, where it highlights that we need to focus on adequate staffing structures and resources. So it's not about, just trying to save money or cutting, but it's really, as we're designing, that's what we're trying to go after, to make sure our students have the supports they need, the resources they need, and our educators have the supports and the resources they need to help support students. Athletics and co-curriculars comes up for students and families and alums all the time in terms of there's right now we have Portland endearing teams, right? So what's going to happen? Are students going to lose opportunities as a result of combining into one high school? So just want to share there that we've already gone through the process where we have co-op teams for some sports where we didn't have enough numbers, like at any one particular school. So we had to combine in order to have the team still exist. And as we combine, we're not going to try, we're going to be mindful that we're not decreasing opportunities for students, but we're, if anything, increasing opportunities. So we're not going to cut sports or have less teams available, but we're really going to work, our athletic directors are working right now to figure out how to do that. And we're going to be working with the state as well, in considering that we will be the largest high school in the state. How do we ensure that we have opportunities for all of our students and not less compared to other schools around us? So being mindful of that. And then lastly, just balancing innovation and community culture. So that's just to say we're doing this not just for the sake of like doing something new, right? We're not aligning just for the sake of aligning, but it's really to think about lifting up, looking at what does research say is best practice? What are the structures that need to be in place to really support students? So that's what we're trying to lift up. So we're looking at what's currently happening, what's working really well, and we're going to keep what's working well. We're not going to do away with it. We're going to keep what's working well and build on it. So that's the key piece. And as we do this work, we're also going to honor what's come before, right? So honor the legacy, the history, and all of that. Really, it's beautiful. And it's very near and dear to the hearts of everyone who's been part of this community for years and for decades. And so really making sure that stays on and it lives on in the way we design this. So we'll have that in place in our design, but we'll also come back to the community and make sure we've got it right and that we're not losing anything that's essential. This slide here really just shares with you that a possible campus mental model, really to help you understand if we were to combine into one campus, right? So this is potentially ways in which we're thinking about creating those small communities to make sure students are well known and that it's not just one giant school. So here too, you see some of the things highlighted that exist in the Portrait of a School community that's been named, is that we're going to integrate CTE in this model, right? Because one of the key pieces is really lifting up that real world experience and helping students to attain skills that are applicable and that are essential in the career field and at college as well. So really making sure CTE is integrated into this and more students have access. Again, right, having it on one campus eliminates certain barriers, such as transportation, really just levels the playing field for students who may not be able to get to PATS right now, or may not be able to get to USM or SMCC because of transportation issues and other things. So you see the College Hall there, and you see PATS there. You also see, we talked about making sure there are structures and systems in place to support all of our kids and to close that achievement gap. So here you see the English Learner Academy for levels 1 and 2. So those are our students who have limited English at a low level. So we've looked at schools outside of Maine that actually have this English Learner Academy where those students are really making huge gains because they've got structures in place that support where they are in their needs as they start off. So that's something we could have there. We have Freshman Academy, as you see there. All 3 of our schools right now have freshman teams in place that are really working to make sure they have weekly data meetings. They're helping students to make sure they're on track to graduate, right? So that students have opportunities and they're well known. So all of that's in place. So just lifting the great work as we talk about not just changing things for the sake of changing things, but that's something we've invested time in our school. So lift that, make sure that shows up in here and build upon it. And so then there's different ways in which we can also think about the small communities. So here you'll see expeditionary learning and international baccalaureate. So one way in which we could build the small communities to have different learning models, right? And the example here is expedition learning, international baccalaureate. Another way we could think about this is to have academies. So you see the STEM-focused academy there. We could also have a health science academy or so a social science academy of some sorts, right? So we can have all of that there. We can have an arts academy, could be one of those as well, performing arts academy. So we can make these small groupings by way of academies. The other ways we could choose just to have it similar, have small housing groups, which is what our middle schools have right now. They're divided up into houses, and the houses have names, but we could have that be one of the options, house 1, house 2, house 3, house 4, and have that be the way that we do this. So this is all just to say that we're really thinking about how do we make sure we have small communities as we design this, and that our students have the supports they need and the structures exist to support students and educators in the work that they're doing as well. So that's what's highlighted here. So the design team is we'll be drafting this and really trying to flesh out what is it that we're going to be going for that will show up in that application. We'll ask for feedback from the community as well. This slide here is just to share with you that we have this work, the design team is leading this work, but there's so much that goes into this that we need work groups to sort of lift this work further and really flesh out different aspects of this. And so we've got educators and community members and parents in these various work groups that are actually doing the work of designing different aspects of this high school experience. And then lastly, just wanted to share with you before we get to the Q&A piece here is that there is a survey on our website. So, and the survey sort of highlights some of the big items that'll show up in this design that we're trying to work through. And please go ahead and fill out that survey and help us to understand what are some of the key things for you that you think should show up in this design. We also will have focus groups that we'll be holding. So stay tuned for those. And we'll have community engagement events as well, probably late winter, early spring, as we continue this work, and we'll continue having it next year as well. So just stay tuned. Our website will stay updated in terms of what opportunities are out there. All right. So that's everything. I did a lot of talking. I'm going to pause there and just would like to know really honestly, as you think about all of this, what are some things that the design team, right, should be aware of as or anticipate as we do this work? And what are some questions that you still have that we can answer right now? And we'll answer some of them now, and we'll answer them as we continue doing this work as well. So this where raise your hand and we can call on you. Matt.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I guess a quick question. I'm not really familiar with all of this yet, but I was wondering if there are any people or groups that oppose this initiative, and what are their concerns, and what would be your responses to their concerns?
Yeah, so I think I'll start, and then I'm going to have Superintendent Scallon also share here. So the folks that sort of have some reservations to this is, you know, that I'm going to actually go back to a slide here. The slide here is that so we named these items because these are the ones that are showing up and that folks are asking lots of questions about, and the ones that are resistant a little bit, their concerns are around these items right here. So there's the concern about what does research say about large schools? What are we going to lose as a result of having one large school in this design or in this shift? So that's one of the things, and so that's where I spoke about that we are being very intentful in terms of ensuring that we're still going to have small communities. We all value that, like, you know, we all feel that's very important in we heard that from our community also. It lives in our Porch River graduate and Porch River school community. So that's not lost to us. And then the other piece is like that bottom one about balancing innovation with community culture. There are people that are very loyal, right, to the school community that they were a part of, or they graduated from, or their kids attend, or just being part of the greater Portland community, where it's heartbreaking to think about change, especially when we think about possibly not having a certain school building still be housing one of our high schools and having that change. So that's where we're really trying very much to think about retaining what's good, building upon it, and really thinking about how do we make space, right, to honor what's come and to honor the great work that teachers have done and the experience we've had. And, you know, like I think of Portland High School, that's like second oldest high school in the country, and there's so much there that people love and cherish just about that building and the history it's had. So really thinking about how do we not lose that and just lift that up in this work.
I would add just one piece just in the framing, because I think Pamela has on there like the big bucket along with the history piece, which is that right now we're being really transparent in the fact that we're in the design phase, right? So we're not coming to the community and saying, here's the finished product and here's the proposal that we're going to go forward. And so that can feel a little bit unnerving, right? And sometimes people feel like they're being asked to say, yep, this is what we should do. And actually at this time, what we're doing is asking for feedback on and input as we're going through the concept and the design phase, because we're not yet at a spot where we're saying this is the proposal. We're very early in that piece relative. And so that can feel a little bit unnerving. And so people, I think, sometimes are jumping to the idea that the application that goes into the state on June 30th is the final. And in fact, the application on June 30th doesn't talk about things like location or full building design or anything like that. It really is an academic design idea at sort of a high level. And so part of what we want folks to engage on is to engage with us on this dreaming idea and to think big with us about what's possible. And so that's where we're at on this. But sometimes it can feel like when we have these trade-offs on the slide here right now, I don't think we've wrestled them to the ground yet where we have perfect answers. And without perfect answers, sometimes people feel like if we don't have those yet, how can we go forward? And unfortunately, or fortunately, the state has a timing process where we have to match up with their timing for that initial application. That's the hard part. The good part is that's in some ways the middle of the process. It's not the end of the process. And so there's a lot of engagement afterwards. And so it's helping folks know that there's these multiple phases on which to engage, and to not worry that the product in June 30th is the blueprint and the final product.
Awesome. Could I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, best case scenario, all roadblocks are pretty easily overcome. Like, what would be the shortest timeline for this whole project?
I mean, Pamela, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's pretty long. So let's just take the major construction. So the major construction, which was one of the ways to pursue state funding, which is the facility needs assessment one. So it's in some ways the more straightforward one. That application was submitted this past August. They take a year to review the application and to do walkthroughs of the buildings across the state. They then rank them. And then over the next 7 or 8 years, they slowly work through the top buildings on that list. And that's to say, all right, let's go into the design phase and to go into that community engagement phase. That is not to get to final shovel in the ground. And so if you think about that, that's a long lead time. So we're talking, we're not talking a 5-year process to a building type idea. The integrated consolidated is the same type of elongated process. It just happens that their application is due, that process's application is due in June. And so you have a year after that for the state to review those applications and then determine if there's any community that they want to engage in. And then again, it kicks off a very long community engagement process. And so either of those processes is long, and many, many years, which is why we're not waiting for a facility solution to think about how do we continue to engage staff, to engage students, to engage the community, to engage our nonprofit partners, which we did today again, to think about how do we continue to improve instruction and outcomes for students at the high school level on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And I think everyone has the ability to just to talk. Any other questions? All right. So we'll still take questions as they come up. We are over time now, but I just wanted to share that if you can, there's that QR code there. You can also see the short bit.ly there, the High School for the Future feedback. If you could actually go into that at some point tonight, capture that and give us feedback. So that way we capture your individual feedback. You'll see the questions that were in some of the slides in there. And then there's some additional questions too for just overall feedback and things that we should consider as we continue in this design. And then there's our contact information there. That email address is just, for the purpose of this, you can just email highschooldesign@portlandschools.org and just to capture all the feedback that that comes from this engagement event, but also you can feel free to email me directly. Any other questions? I'm going to go back to the slide that has a QR for those that might need it. Thank you so much for the time you took this evening. Greatly appreciated. And as we've shared, we're going to continue with the community engagement. This is not the end of it. And there are lots of questions. Nothing's been finalized. We truly are in that design phase right now, and we won't be done with being in that design phase at the end of this year. We'll submit that application, but we'll have more work to continue to do next year, and we'll continue coming back to the community to really make sure all voices have been heard. And that design, that does really represent the voice of the community and what the community needs are. And that's really why at the heart of it is our Port River graduate and Port River school community, because that is what we heard from the community. We need to make sure is in place those skills and attributes and those conditions for success to make sure that we fulfill our promise to ensure that students are prepared for success after they leave in an ever-changing world. So that is the work we're doing right now, and that is the work we will continue to lift up and to do. And we'd love for you guys to collaborate with you and have you alongside us as we do that, because it will take the entire community to lift that up. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.